Chris, welcome to the show, man.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, where are you located?
I'm in Northern Virginia, about 15 minutes from DC.
Uh-huh. And is that where you're from originally?
No, complicated story. My mom's from New York, but my dad's Dutch. They met in Belgium, so that's where I was born in 1998. Lived there for 17 years, then moved to the UK, lived there for 5 years, and then I've been in the DC area for the last 5 years.
Okay. So, we were talking off there. We have a shared passion for soccer, and that makes sense, being born in Belgium.
Yep.
Uh, it was the Belgium team never got it done though. They had so much talent in the last couple World Cups, and
I know the golden generation, but now they're all old and retiring, and I think the boat might have sailed on that one.
no more De Bruyne and yeah, Lukaku and Hazard. Yeah, the ship has sailed, I'm afraid.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I thought certainly 2 World Cups ago they were probably the favorite or one that I had picked to win it, but never got it done. Okay, so you've lived all over the place, and in Europe, from what I know, and I've never hunted in Europe, but it seems like it's a very elitist,
hmm
privatized undertaking, and there is certainly no public land really where this
Yeah.
occurs. So
Yeah.
talk about that. Do people hunt in Belgium? I know they hunt in the UK, but again, it's all on preserves and stuff like that.
Yeah. Honestly, thinking back to it, I don't think I know a single person growing up who was a hunter. Not even really fishers. Like it's just not that much of a thing in Europe. And I think that the real reason, I think there's multiple reasons. One of the big reasons is that historically, most of like the big open lands, like the forests and like all of that, were owned by the royalty or by the
Mm-hmm.
nobility. And so the people that would be hunting would be the aristocrats, and they'd like take these like big hunting parties of like 40 people with their horses and their dogs, and they'd go shoot the foxes and the deer in the royal woods and all that kind of stuff. And that just wasn't a thing for the average person. And then, like you mentioned, there's not a whole lot of public land in most of Europe. In the US, you have these like huge swaths of public land, and like everyone can go out and go hunting
Mm-hmm.
if they get a tag, and it's just a big part of the culture. But in Europe, it's not. People don't go hunting. They don't own guns. There's no real culture, and it's just like a an aristocratic elitist thing, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So does that lend to a negative mindset towards hunting? I mean, I would think that it does
Oh
when you
yeah.
don't have anyone doing it.
Oh yeah, there's like a big sense, and I had this growing up myself, right? Like hunting is basically like the hunter killing poor Bambi, or like the Bambi's mom, or whatever it was in the Disney story. Like that's the vibe that you have. That hunting is like just bloodthirsty people wanting to go out and kill animals, and it's bad for the environment. It's mean to the animals, and most people just don't have a sense at all of the role that hunters play in like preserving ecosystems, and it's really quite a different cultural experience.
Hmm. You mentioned fox hunting. I had on a guy from this organization called the Hunting Kind, and they're based out of Europe, and they're fighting like hell. They're houndsmen,
hmm
and their way of life as fox hunters has been under attack for the last 3 decades. And they have it to now where you can't even hunt a fox with more than 2 hounds. And it's
Yeah.
like, they're used to hunting them with 20, and they ride on horseback with the proper
Yeah.
regalia, and it's a big production, but it's that nostalgia and regalia and tradition that these folks live for, and the antis have essentially neutered them to the point where it's like, oh, there was a guy in France. This was before it got to the point where it is in the UK, but this French houndsman moved all of his hounds to the UK, his entire pack, because it was like, well, France outlawed it, so what good are they here?
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
it's not much better in the UK nowadays, I can tell you that.
yeah.
When I lived in the UK for a few years, I was involved in UK politics, and this was like one of those weird, super niche issues that would come up like every election cycle, where it's like, oh, the conservatives, they wanted to like kill the poor foxes, and this is like a medieval practice, and we shouldn't do it. It became like a culture war issue during elections. And then the consequence has been that over time, it was such an emotional topic that access to hunting foxes was diminished again and again. And so you ended up with like you go to the center of London and like every park is infested with foxes. Like there's huge fox problems because there's no longer they don't have a natural predator in that part of the world, right? And
Hmm.
so if you're not hunting them, they're just going to keep breeding, and then all the consequences of that. And so you literally have city foxes all over the UK because we've allowed that to happen. So it's definitely like a part of what I was talking about earlier, like the emotional connection to animals, and that
Hmm.
hunting is seen as like opposite of that. It's just a weird cultural thing that the Europeans have.
Yeah, well, and it might start in Europe, but it always migrates west, in like Canada more so than the U.S. Although I don't want to say that. That's not true. I mean, Colorado tried to ban mountain lion hunting last year, and they almost succeeded, but we got that defeated, Prop 127. But like for instance, Canada had a political liaison between the Green Party and uh, whatever their left leaning party is in British Columbia, and the
Mhm.
Greenies and the other party combined their votes in order to ban grizzly bear hunting, and that was about a decade ago. And I did a trapline trip with an outfitter in BC, and he was like, "Yeah, dude, all of a sudden, like we used to have two grizzly tags every year. We would sell them for $20,000 to hunter, and
Yeah.
the government just said no more. And so they just essentially stole $40,000 from us because of emotional reaction to what we do. And now, they keep trying to get it um, to keep they keep trying to reintroduce the hunt to get it back what they
Yeah.
lost. But it's always so hard once you lose something to go back and say, we screwed up. There are too many grizzlies. Science says there's too many. Now we have increased human wildlife conflict with grizzlies that have lost their inherent fear of humans. They're getting in trash. They're attacking pets, and then ultimately they attack a person. And it's all because of emotions. No science whatsoever to dictate it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's basically been the trend of the environmental movement since like the 1970s, right? Like it's all been an emotional thing. Uh, it's been about like images of polar bears or like the poor animals that are being hunted and what we must do to save them. And you the consequence of those ideas are insane policies. Like what you mentioned is one of them, but like an even more insane one because you mentioned Colorado, is there were proposals in Colorado to like literally give contraception to deer as opposed to hunting them because they were overpopulated. It's like, huh, if only there were a very easy solution to overpopulation of deer. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, let's spend millions of dollars on contraception as opposed to making it a revenue source for the government. So I think the consequence of this emotionalism of environmentalism is really manifesting in a lot of the insane policies we're seeing. And you're right, like it's not just Canada, it's not just Europe, like it's starting to come to a lot of American states as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, and that's why the Colorado one, Prop 127, was so important, because you look at other blue Western states. New Mexico comes to mind. Like, if Colorado did that and were successful, these other states would be like, hey, not
Oh
the
yeah, it's a
states in general,
cascading
but
effect.
yeah,
Yeah.
the movement, and it's a very targeted approach. Like, the antis would be like, oh, we did it in Colorado. Which state are we doing it in next? And they just move their efforts there.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're well organized and well funded. So it is a massive threat. So you are the president of the American Conservation Coalition. How long have you been there?
So the organization was founded in 2017 by a group of young conservatives who cared about the outdoors. I joined in 2020. I was employee, I think, like number five or number six. And then in 2023, I had the honor of becoming the president of the organization. So I've been in that role for over 2 years now. And I think we're going to end this year, 2025, with like 32 or 33 full-time staff. So definitely
Well,
a lot of exciting growth.
for sure. So I honestly wasn't familiar with you guys until our mutual friend Kelly Young introduced us. So thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
So what do you guys do at the American Conservation Coalition?
Yeah, very simple. Our mission is to build what we call the conservative environmental movement. Our view is that once upon a time, the original conservationists, like the hunters and ranchers, the farmers, the anglers of this country, they were the conservationists of the land. And if you look back over a century ago, people like Teddy Roosevelt, who was a Republican, started a lot of the conservation movement And he did that because he was a conservative. Like from our
Mhm.
perspective, conservation is a conservative issue. It's literally in the word, right? Like conserve, conservative. And it's very odd to us that not only has the conservative movement stepped away from the issue for as long as I've been alive, basically, right? Like born in 1998, my entire life has been Al Gore in the early 2000s through like Greta Thunberg and AOC today. And as a conservative who cares about the outdoors, I was like, I don't really know how I fit into this. And so it's weird that we've taken a step back, but then we've also allowed the left to just completely monopolize it. And I think a lot of that happened really around the original Earth Day in 1970, where environmentalism all of a sudden became a political slogan for young college educated activists in like the coastal cities, as
Mhm.
opposed to like a lifestyle for people that lived on the land, survived on the land, hunted on the land. And so that movement from lifestyle to political slogan and political accessory is really damaging because it became about the emotionalism, right? Like it's like, oh, they don't really understand it. They just have the emotions that are associated with it. And so ACC was founded in 2017 really to be the counterbalance to that, to show, hey, we as young conservatives care about the outdoors. We want to protect it, and we want to have a vision for the future that is in line with our values and principles. And so we built up a grassroots movement. We have over 85,000 young people across the country now, over 400 events last year, do a lot of work in DC and across the country to really advance conservative principles for conservation.
And like you said, it's a younger crowd that is
Mhm.
invested in your membership, but also the staff. Like, what is the average age of the staff at ACC?
Yeah, so I'm 27. The oldest person on the team is 32. So
Mm,
all 30 staff are under or 32 or younger.
that's awesome. Yeah, for far too long, I think conservatives were reactionary and, like you said, just let the left run roughshod over this space. Is what is conservation and what is it at its core? What does it really mean? Is it rewilding? Is it preservation? No, those are completely different things from actual conservation.
Hmm.
And that's why I had such an issue with Deb Haaland in the last administration. And
Yeah.
SCI came to her and said, "We want a commitment to no net loss policy on hunting." And she wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
She just flat out wouldn't do it. Well,
Yeah.
Deb's not a conservationist; she's a preservationist. Huge difference.
Hmm.
I'm going to close off millions upon millions of acres in Alaska to non-resident and resident hunters. Basically, if you're not a subsistence hunter, you can't hunt moose and caribou here. Okay,
Hmm.
Deb, where's the science that says that that's warranted?
Yeah.
I don't have any science.
But
I
emotion.
just
Yeah.
want to do it.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Well,
uh,
and Teddy Roosevelt was the first, I think, to really popularize this idea that conservation is not the same as preservation. Because the
right.
premise of preservation is that humans are bad for the environment, and therefore we should separate humans from the environment as much as possible, and we should kind of return nature to like a pristine wilderness that is like a primordial kind of sense of it, right?
Yeah.
And the
Wait for
conservation
it.
ethic is actually humans live in relationship with the environment. And we have a role to manage the outdoors, and that could be like forest management to make sure we don't have wildfires. That could be ecosystem management. That could be population management for wildlife. And if we don't do that, it actually ends up with worse environmental outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this like principle in the conservation movement that one of the first ideas of conservation is also development. Like you need to be able to balance your protection of the outdoors with like your use of resources from the outdoors because that's how we survive as humans, and there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing inherently wrong with that.
No, and I think a lot of the leftist ideology on this topic, they look at their own existence as a stain on the environment. And it's like, oh man, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be walking on two legs because I am the apex predator.
Yeah.
Whether you believe God made you that or it's just evolution, whatever, that's your personal opinion. But it doesn't change the fact. And they're
Yeah.
like, no, a lion would kill you. Well, yeah, but I could also shoot a lion with a gun anytime I wanted to. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to do hand-to-hand combat with an
Right.
apex predator,
Right.
but we have the technology. We are superior, and that's why it is our responsibility to manage all of them. And so, really, the goal is so that everything wins. You know,
Yeah.
and nothing wins if you're just like we're removing all humanity from the equation and we'll just let them do their thing. Well, okay, that might have worked
Right.
in 1600 when I don't know how many indigenous people lived in America, but not very many relative to today. But now you have smaller spaces, confined places where these animals exist and they have to be managed.
Yeah. So there's this biblical concept of dominion, which is that mankind has been given dominion over the earth, and
I
dominion
believe
does
that.
not mean right, and I believe that too,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I do the work that I do. Dominion does not mean exploitation of the environment. That is not what it means, and the people that do that actually throughout the Bible are punished by God. But dominion also doesn't mean worshiping nature or removing yourself from it entirely. What it means is to have like a careful stewardship and cultivation role over the outdoors that you're living in relationship with. And once you don't do that, once you put nature above as an idol, then you end up with bad consequences. But also, if you don't adequately steward the environment, then you also have bad consequences. And I think the biblical approach, but also the conservative approach, is that like smart balance of the two. And I think that's what we need to get the environmental movement in America back to.
Mm-hmm. Did you see, and I agree with you on that front, did you see the clip of the guy at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting talking about eminent domain for the wolves?
No, I didn't
You
see
didn't see
that.
this? Let me see if I can. I don't have it pulled up, but let me see if I can find it real quick on my Instagram because it's pretty insane to be frank. But yeah, I mean, this dude, I think he was actually a professor, which is even more scary because these are the type of folks who are influencing the minds of future conservationists. And let's see. I'll edit this out. If I can find it. I think your mind will be blown when you hear it. Let's see here. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, take a listen to this. This was at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting.
Conclusion that the only real way to solve the wolf livestock conflict is for the federal government to buy out ranches and private property holdings in the most remote regions of the Rocky Mountains so wolves can live in peace and privacy. The federal buyout should be voluntary to begin with, based on fair market prices. A second point, for those unwilling to act in the common good, the federal government should use the right of eminent domain as authorized in the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. I would like to point out that Great Smoky Mountains.
Blah, 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 blah. But yeah,
That's crazy.
so that the
Well,
wolves can live in peace and harmony.
right. Right.
While they
And what you
eat
notice
themselves
about
out of
that,
house and home by killing every elk
right,
in the Rocky
right.
Mountains.
Well, but what you notice about that is that they anthropomorphize wolves, right?
Yeah.
Like they're humans. They're humans that deserve peace and privacy and have rights, and we should use the Constitution to somehow preserve their particular rights. Like the whole thing is just insane.
But that's the mindset that we're facing. And people really believe that. It's insane. So you wrote an interesting article. I think it's a couple years old, but it's titled "From Trout to Polar Bears: How the Environmental Movement Lost America." And I think the subheading was "Shifting Control to Cities." I didn't write down the subheading, but essentially that's what it was. It was you shift control, you take the control out of the people that have skin in the game, hunters, ranchers, and you say, here, people in Denver, Colorado, in your cubicle, you decide the fate.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was kind of talking about earlier with the original Earth Day was that shifting of um, who has authority over these issues, who's claimed the moral high ground. And I think what we've seen in the last 50 years of environmentalism in America is that this has become an issue that the left has tried to own. They've tried to use it as a mechanism of control over the people that they don't like or that they don't agree with, right? The local people, the rural people, the hunters, the ranchers, the farmers, and it's become like a dogma for them, right? Like we need to have preservation, we need to lock these lands away, we need to like make sure that the animals live in peace and prosperity. And I think the consequence of that has been a really radical shift of conservation away from like what do you do in your daily life and how do you live your life? How do you manage the land that you're responsible for to being outsourced to bureaucrats in places like Washington, D.C. who think they know better than you.
Mm.
And often they don't because they don't understand the specific circumstances. They don't understand what matters to you in your daily life and how you manage those things. And this kind of bureaucratization of the environment has been really detrimental, not just to the lifestyles of the ranchers and the hunters and the farmers, but also to the policies that we need to implement to adequately take care of the outdoors. You think
Mm.
of the forest, like the forest fire crisis we have in America. Every single year, millions of acres of forest fire out west go up in flames, not just in the summer anymore, but also in the winter. We saw like in LA, down to like in LA, you had these forest fires or these wildfires, and that's directly downstream of this mindset that we can't manage the forest, that we can't have local people that take care of the forest, like, by the way, the indigenous people did over thousands of years. And so all of a sudden you end up with millions of homes burned up, millions of acres destroyed, people that die, people that are left homeless. And it's a direct consequence of the outsourcing of conservation policy to bureaucrats.
Hmm. Why though? Why did you pick polar bear and trout in that title of
Yeah.
that article?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that the environmental left has been very effective, honestly, at getting this message across is because they tug on the heartstrings, right? Like this emotionalism that we talked about. And the idea of a polar bear, the poor polar bear that's being like their habitat's being taken away because global warming is making the ice caps melt, and so they're losing their habitat. That's kind of become one of the big calls of the environmental movement is to like let's protect the polar bear. And I think it's so indicative to me that the polar bear is what they chose, right? They chose the animal that is quite literally the furthest from humans in the world. Like they're on the Arctic. They like 99.9% of people have never seen a polar bear in their life. It is not an animal that we have a personal relationship with. It's not an animal that we really kind of like understand like on a like human level. Whereas like whether it's deer or trout or whatever, those are the animals that are part of our daily lives. If you're a hunter or a fisher, you know like the ins and outs of like how the trout move through the river. You understand like the patterns of the deer, and it's a personal thing for you. And we've made this, as opposed to a local thing, we've made this like a globalist thing where all of a sudden the polar bear are the thing that we should be caring about, as opposed to the actual issues that matter to our daily lives.
Well, guess what? The polar bears are still getting shot, whether they want to protect them or not.
Well,
And
yeah.
I mean, the indigenous people sell the hunts, and I mean, you don't have to. I think it was in the '90s because I do know hunters that have actually gone up there, hunted polar bear, and brought the polar bears back. But I think it was in the '90s when they said no more importing polar bears. Um, People that pursue adventure, international hunting, people that enjoy sport hunting are still going to go to Canada and shoot the bear, especially now in 2025 when you've got taxidermists like Kanadi that will make you a legitimate life-size mount that's all artificial. It looks just like the polar bear that you would have shot.
Yeah.
So if you can afford it, you're going. And the dumb thing is, if you're a Mexican hunter, if you're a Canadian hunter, European hunter, whatever, you can mount the polar bear. You can actually get it back if you from Mexico. It's just a
Yeah.
U.S. law. It's like, no, we can't import polar bears. Well, that's stupid. They're still going to shoot them,
Yeah. And I think
and
there's
it's
that
and it's
dimension of it.
managed. It's not like they're just. I mean, let's be very clear. It's not like they're out there just bloodthirsty. Just we hate
Yeah, it's
polar
not a
bears. We
free
want to
for
kill.
all. Yeah.
These are indigenous people that see the value. I mean, if anybody sees the value in wildlife, it's indigenous people that
Right.
survive off the land, and they know there's like,
Right.
hey, we have a quota. We're going to manage these things effectively, but we are going to manage them, and we are going to sell whatever the X number of tags that were allocated based on science. So,
Yeah. Well, and if you're an indigenous tribe somewhere, then the polar bear might be a personal thing to you, right? Because that is a part of your lifestyle.
yeah.
But for most people, it is. And the reason why I mention that is not even beyond the hunting aspect of this, like the broader environmental movement has made climate change like the number one thing they care about. And polar bear, beyond the hunting aspect of this, are seen as like the symbol of what happens with runaway climate change and like
Yeah.
the sea level rising and the ice caps melting. And so the poor polar bear will be left without food and without habitat and things like that. And like I understand why they care about it, but my point in saying this is that they've made such an abstract kind of faraway symbol like the polar bear the emotional image of climate advocacy. And what has happened is that all of environmentalism has been subsumed into the broader climate mantle, and then you end up with these crazy proposals like the Green New Deal that are essentially means for bureaucrats to take control of the American economy and to like reshape it in the way that they want it. Like they're deeply skeptical of capitalism. They're skeptical of hunters and farmers. They're skeptical of companies that are kind of building their products and things like that. And I think that this idea that we need to outsource to bureaucrats because we need to save the polar bears is just such like an emotionally nefarious way of thinking about it,
Mm.
because it takes away control from everyday people and makes bureaucrats the arbiters of what's correct and what's not correct.
Yeah. Well, and now I'll actually I'm going to save that thought. Let's go on to another article, a link you sent me regarding the Patriot Parks Act. Apparently, our national park system has a backlog of like $23 billion in overdue maintenance. Let me tell you, I have seen it firsthand. I shot an elk in New Mexico on public land. We were packed in 7 miles. My feet, my blisters had blisters. I mean, my feet were destroyed. It was the last day. Get this elk with my buddy Chisholm, and we're packing it out. And I've hunted this area for elk 3 times now, and have backpacked in there for 15 years with my dad and his buddies. Grouse hunted, fly fished. We take the elk to a trail, and we call a wrangler, and they're gonna come in the next morning and basically we said, here's the pin, here's the trail, and they're going to come in and get it. And then we're going to walk out that afternoon. Well, we drop the meat off. It takes us, probably 8 hours to get it quartered up and moved about a half a mile through deadfall to this trail. And we get it all set up, hang it on meat poles to keep it away from bears. And we're like, oh, thank God that was a job well done. Now let's get back to camp. And we're walking up the trail, and there's massive laydowns. It's like too big for horses. There's no way a horse can get across it. So now we're like, well, okay, now what do we do? And we had to go back and move the meat all over again to an area where the horses could get to. And I had hiked on that trail many times. But within the last year, from the time that I was there previously, and it wasn't like these trees fell over the day before, and it wasn't like there was only one. There was like 10, 15 of them. There's no way the horses could ever get through there. Well, it's just because the trails hadn't been maintained. So I've seen it firsthand, and it affected me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, our public lands are an incredible asset to the American people, but they're not always as well maintained as they should be, right? And specifically, when it comes to national parks, we have, like you mentioned, a $23 billion maintenance backlog for the trails and like all the maintenance that needs to be done to ensure outdoor recreation access and like pristine, like beautiful American landscapes.
Yeah. And this was the Carson National Forest, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have the problems everywhere, but the national parks are the most overrun of any like public land in America, right? Because they're national parks. Everyone wants to go there, including people that come from abroad. And so we've all been to like a national park and you're looking at the beautiful vista. And then there's like 1,000 people that are like crowding out around you, like, and they're from Asia, they're from India, from Europe, from all over. And the problem right now that's happening is that the parks are overcrowded as a result, and they're still underfunded. They're placing a burden on the maintenance of these parks. And so a policy that has been proposed by some of our friends at the Property Environment Research Center, PERC, was why don't we charge those international visitors to our national parks a surcharge to make sure that they're paying their fair share? Because right now what's happening is Americans pay twice for our national parks, once through taxes, and then the second time when you go visit a national park, you pay your fee. When foreigners go visit a national park, they only pay the fee and they've not paid any of the taxes that go to maintaining our public lands. And so the proposal is let's charge them a little bit more, so that we make sure that we have more money going into the park so we can maintain them. Like seems super common sense. So we have a 501c4 kind of lobbying part of our organization. We wrote a bill called the Patriot Parks Act, and what it does is it authorizes the Department of Interior to charge foreigners more to enter our national parks so that we can spend the dollars to maintain the parks. And so that bill's been introduced by Senator Banks in the Senate. and then Riley Moore in the House. I wrote this op-ed with Congressman Moore to kind of highlight why this is critical to preserve our natural heritage, and we're really hoping that it gets past this Congress.
Good. I mean, I'm a nationalist. I'm all for charging foreigners more, especially if they're paying half of what we are. Like,
Yeah,
I'm all for. Great, come here, enjoy it, love, see how beautiful and amazing it is. You don't have that in your country, more likely than not, right? Most countries
hmm
don't have the vast public land resources that we do, and to a lesser degree, Canada has a lot of wild places, and I don't know, but I don't know how Canada's is as far as what's public. They do give a lot of that land to guides and outfitters as concessions,
yeah,
and you're not allowed to go hunting there. So I don't know. I don't really know how Canada's system works, but they do have a lot of wild resources left. But yeah, I'm all for it. Charge them more.
yeah.
Let them invest in the thing that they want to come and see.
Yeah.
Makes
Well,
sense.
our national park system is not just the most beautiful in the world, it's also like the best organized and the best access. Like you can go
Do
right up to
you?
the
I mean,
edge.
do you think that the average, let's just say, leftist actually believes? They probably think that our park system is just in disrepair and it sucks, and because there's so much negativity. It's like, oh, the park system, you know, uh, the trails are closed, the bathrooms don't work. It's like, no, it is the best by a mile. Like, I don't. There's so much complaining. I see it online more than any other place. It's like just bitching and moaning about how terrible and terrible shape the national park system is in. And yeah,
Yeah.
you can't argue that there is a backlog of $23 billion in overdue maintenance. But at the same time, like, the infrastructure has been built out,
Yeah. There's not
and
many places in the world where you can like go up to the edge of the Grand Canyon and like there's a railing and you can like peek into the Grand. Like that's just like
mm,
a level of interaction with the great outdoors that America has that most other places in the world don't have. And that's a uniquely like American gift to the world that we should like be proud of, but also we should make sure that it's well maintained, right? And
mm,
so if people are coming here, like you said, to enjoy it, like sure, come visit it, but pay your fair share and let's make sure that this beautiful thing that you're visiting is maintained for future generations as well.
yeah. As a conservative, what was your organization's reaction to Mike Lee's proposed public land sell off? Uh, I found myself going across the aisle and I think anybody who's hunted public land or likes to take advantage of our incredible park system probably feels the same way. It's like, no, this is a misstep. I don't agree with that. And, you're not going to agree with 100% of what your party tries to do. And I certainly
Yeah.
don't. And I didn't there. But I will say that I was very publicly opposed to it.
hmm
But it's not for the reason that I think, like, the reason why for me was I think if you let them sell off part of our public land system, like, there's that, I think it just gives them carte blanche to keep doing it. And
Yeah.
so, and I've said this many times, it's like, how do you put that genie back in the bottle? Like, if you say, oh, you can only sell off this much, well, no, I don't trust the government to govern themselves and stop selling it off. And there are parts of Utah that definitely should have been sold. Like, Utah is 80 something percent federally/state owned, most of that being from the feds. And the state is growing in population and they don't have enough housing. I get it. People like, I don't think people really understand. Like, they need more housing. There's places in Wyoming. Gunworks is based out of Gunworks. Very popular, precision rifle system. Well, Aaron told my buddy Carl, he's like, I can't hire employees because we don't have enough houses.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a
and
real issue.
it's all public land. Well, okay, I get it. So,
Yeah.
yes, there is public land that isn't viable habitat. It doesn't do anything for the wildlife. It's just basically just sitting there, not
Yeah.
being utilized, and it could be used. But going back to that problem, it's like,
Yeah.
if you let them
So,
do it, I don't know when they stop.
yeah, I'm curious. You said something very interesting. You said in opposing the public land sale that Mike Lee proposed, you felt like you were crossing the aisle. Like explain that to me.
Yeah, well, I probably shouldn't have been a partisan issue, right?
Hmm.
but I felt like it was, and that people were surprised that I spoke out against it because I support Trump and I'm a conservative, and they're like, they
Yeah.
probably thought we all. I guess that's like I think I was stigmatized for being a conservative. That it was surprising to people that I would come out and say, no, this is a terrible
Yeah.
idea.
It's interesting that you say that. I have a slightly different perspective,
Uh,
which is from where I was sitting, and I was like very like kind of closely ingrained in a lot of the conversations in DC at like a political level. The harshest pushback that I saw against the public land sale was from conservatives.
yeah,
And I don't think this is actually a matter of like us jumping across the aisle to like the other side. I actually think this is us sticking to conservative values, which include like conservation and maintaining our natural heritage, which is the
uh,
public land system, which is for the benefit and enjoyment of the American people. Like that's the founding mantra of American public lands. And our perspective as an organization was nuanced similar to what you just said, which is this proposal is a bad proposal. There's no way around it. Like if you actually read the bill and what was in it, it was like opening up lands to be sold that weren't like national parks or like national forests technically, but had there was a lot of beautiful public land that was of pristine environmental benefit or outdoor recreation benefit that
mm,
would have potentially been sold that were not at all good public lands to be used for housing. And so the bill itself, with had like mandatory like sales and things like that, was just a very poorly written bill. And we pushed back heavily against that and
mm,
said like, no, like our first premise should be the public lands are for the benefit and enjoyment of the American people, and they should not just be sold off to the highest bidder. So that's the first thing. But we are sensitive to the fact that there's a housing shortage, especially in the West, where there are a lot of public lands. And so you need to be very careful in identifying the specific lands that have no environmental value or no outdoor recreation value and that are close to urban areas so they can actually be used for housing, and then specifically figuring out if those places can be used for housing. That's like maybe 500,000 acres. But
mm,
the public land proposal that Mike Lee had was like millions of acres. And so
right.
you just need to be much more targeted and much more narrow in your approach to this. And that's kind of the nuance that I guess we took in the issue.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so then, um, I would counter with, there's no way the hardcore leftists would ever agree to sell off even those places. Like even if you went in and did an environmental study and said this land is not viable for wildlife, for forestry, for really anything. It's just sitting here. We're not utilizing it. You can't really unless you just wanted to go for a walk on it. It's just
Yeah.
not good habitat. So I would say if you could show me a specific proposal for X parcel of land, I would consider that because yes, our population continues to grow,
Hmm.
and it should. That is the sign of a healthy country. A
Yeah.
negative population trend, not good for your country. Uh, so I would say, yeah, show me that, and then we can have a conversation. But that's not what happened, like you said. And but I don't think you would ever like BHA. You think BHA would be like, yeah, let's sell that? No, no, no
Yeah,
way
I
in
mean,
hell.
I think you'll always have like the cranks on the far left that will like just don't want to do anything. Like they don't even want to build like a nuclear plant or something. Like they're just
Mm.
against building or doing anything. But I will say like even the Biden administration sold some federal land around Las Vegas to be used for public housing development because they deemed that it was of no ecological or recreational
Where was
value.
the outcry? I didn't see it. I guess it just got swept under
Well,
the
so
rug. I
there
don't
was a
know.
that was a partisan thing, right? Like there's no credit over that. I mean, I will say it was a different proposal than what Mike Lee did because it wasn't millions of acres. It was a targeted approach. And like to be fair to them, like that's the right way to go about it. And they were able to work with the stakeholders. The other thing about the Mike Lee thing that I found so baffling is clearly the senator has like a particular emotional appeal on on the basis that Utah is like disproportionately public land, disproportionately federally owned. And so that creates all kinds of problems for the state. Totally sympathetic to that. But he did like basically zero outreach to the outdoor community when coming up with this proposal. So all of a sudden, you like the headlines are like Republicans trying to sell public lands, and everyone in the outdoor community is like, "What the hell is happening?" Like it like caught everyone by surprise because he didn't do the due diligence there. But then the other thing was all the environmental groups on the left were saying Republicans want to sell your public lands. Republicans want to like get rid of this and like use it for development and whatnot. It's like no, there's like one very specific person that introduced a very specific bill that most Republicans are actually against, and even the administration was
Oh,
against.
dude, the amount of hate and vitriol that I have experienced online. Anytime I'm like, if you get into, say, you want to comment on a meat eater post, bunch of leftists on there. They're like, "Shut up! You voted for Trump." I'm like, "You freaking idiot!" I literally publicly have 10 posts vilifying the public land sell-off.
Yeah.
So don't give me that crap. You vote every time to restrict my Second Amendment rights. You vote every time for the party that introduces 99.9% of all anti-hunting legislation. How do you suss that out? Oh, and by the way, 9mm and 223 are the most popular calibers in America. Most of them, of most of the gun owners of those calibers, don't hunt, by the way. But every time they buy a box of ammunition, it funds Pittman Robertson. And you
Yeah.
want to outlaw those? And I'm like, so you want to have less money for the things that you say you love?
Yeah.
And oh, and by the way, the Second Amendment isn't about hunting, you idiot. So I don't know. But they
Well, yeah, I mean,
lambast me so hard for knowing that I'm a conservative. I'm like, look, I agreed with you. Like, it wasn't even it never even clicked in my brain to say, oh, this is good. Let's sell off public lands. I very quickly was like, no, we're not doing that.
yeah.
Absolutely not.
Exactly. And you saw like I saw these fundraisers on Instagram from like the Center for Biological Diversity where they're like the Republican Party and Trump want to sell off all of your public lands to BlackRock or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just so dishonest and
Ryan
uh
Bussey is the absolute worst.
yeah.
The guy that ran for governor of Montana.
Yeah.
Like he thinks all Republicans are scumbags that are trying to sell off your public land. I'm like,
Well, and the reality is that this was actually a really cool moment of the outdoor community on both the left and the right kind of locking arms and both saying this is a bad idea. Like, I don't know if you saw those Twitter posts of people being like, the only thing that can unite the left and right nowadays apparently is like Mike Lee trying to sell our public lands. Like, that
yeah,
was
oh
actually
yeah,
kind of a remarkable thing. And it showed how deeply ingrained this idea of like America's natural heritage and our public lands is. And it's so critical to our identity as a people and as a nation. And so I think we should be celebrating the fact that people were able to push back against from both sides of the aisle, including Republicans that were against the proposal of like a very powerful senator from their own party. Like that's a
hmm
really, really good thing.
yeah. Well, I always take the temperature. I think you can. Social media is a dangerous place, but I think it is a very good barometer as far as people's how people feel. What is their ideology? And the leftist hunters still think that we all want to sell off public land and that we're ridiculous for voting for a conservative.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but we just have a recent history of where we joined forces together, and it wasn't, you
Well,
know,
and they also don't even take into account the fact that under the first Trump administration, we passed the Great American Outdoors Act,
yeah,
largest investment in American history in our public lands and conservation. This Congress, what we're going to do is we're going to reauthorize the Legacy Restoration Fund, and we're going to add on new things like the Patriot Parks Act to have over $1 billion, hopefully per year, for national park maintenance. We're going to add things like the Fix Our Forests Act, which will help with forest management and reducing wildfire risk out west. There's like a bunch of other proposals that we're pioneering right now that fall under this Make America Beautiful Again executive order that the president signed, that if we get all those things done, we could have the largest conservation package in American history passing under this administration. That's a huge deal. And that doesn't mean everything is perfect right now. That doesn't mean there's things like the public lands proposal that we should be fighting back against. But people should be willing to give it a chance and work with like the people in power right now if they want to get stuff done, as opposed to just complaining on social media.
Another thing I see the other side of the aisle bitching about frequently is land and water conservation fund, actual funding for that. They're, complaining like, oh, conservatives are trying to do away with this. I don't know how. It's probably a nuanced issue, but you're more familiar with it than I am. I don't know if there's uh, any if that has any teeth to that claim, if there's anything there or not.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't followed that one as closely as I probably should have. Um, but having spent like time with Secretary Doug Burgum of the Interior and like pe folks in the administration, they want to make sure that we're doing right by our public lands and by our environment and conserving those for future generations. and they're trying to really lean into new things like this Make America Beautiful Again initiative to come up with creative ideas that can actually bolster outdoor recreation in our public lands. Again, that doesn't mean that every single little thing that they do is going to be perfect, but my overwhelming sense is working with these people every single day
No, they
that
never
they
are perfect.
right. But they do want to do the right thing, and our role as an organization is to make sure they do the right thing. When they're not doing the right thing, we're going to want to call them out. And I think the public lens thing was an example, not of the administration doing it, but of a Republican doing it, and
Mm.
they got called out. And so I have a lot of hope for what can be accomplished during this administration, like I just mentioned, on like a historic conservation and lands package. It's going to take a lot of work, but we feel like we're up to the task.
Um, Let me ask you about the Roadless Rule Act, because that is something that, again, people are they're throwing shade at conservative hunters for saying, look, at now your party's trying to do this. Well, guess what? I don't know that I'm totally against the Roadless Rule Act. I don't like. I feel like, say you want to go to Alaska. All right, how much money? You better have deep pockets. You want to go hunting in Alaska? You're going in on a float plane, more than likely. That's expensive. I know. I've priced the hunts. I want to go. I want to do it.
Yeah.
There's no infrastructure in most of Alaska's wilderness, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I also believe that we should be invested in energy development.
Hmm.
Because here's the other thing, which the BHA crowd has no use for. Guess what? Public lands are multi-use. Period. They are for energy development. They are for mineral extraction. They are for especially grazing. And I think they would. I don't think. I know they would just assume none of that exists on public land.
Yeah, I mean, you're right because one of the beautiful things about American public lands is that it is multi-use. And that means it can be multi-use for conservation outcomes. It can be for outdoor recreation. It can be for energy development, um, grazing and like ranching and things like that. And you need to be able to balance all of those different things. And so like when it comes specifically to the roadless rule, our perspective is like you need to be able to balance the different things, right? In places like Alaska, you want to be able to develop American energy, which by the way is cleaner and more environmentally responsible than literally anywhere else in the world. And so that's something that we should be proud of and be able to continue doing while balancing that with like good conservation practices,
Mhm.
right?
Have you asked an
Um,
Alaskan resident what they think?
Personally,
I have. I've asked many. I've just guys that
what they
I've
say.
interviewed. Dude, they all want energy development in Alaska because it supports their local economy. Like Alaska is not a very wealthy place, not a very
Yeah,
wealthy state,
yeah,
and they're like, yeah, and these are outfitters and guides. And like,
yeah.
yeah, we would like to see more infrastructure, but we can't because the feds handcuff us on what we can and can't do with land that exists within our own state boundaries. So,
Yeah, and I think that's like where balance and flexibility are important. Like another issue with like the roadless rule is that it kind of constrains our ability to fight back against wildfires and to
yeah,
have forest management. And so our preference as an organization is probably to significantly tweak it as opposed to like get rid of it entirely. I think the premise of like trying to keep wilderness where you can like there's good premises, right? Like you want to make sure
for
that
sure,
that
and I'm for
is
that.
maintained, but you also want to make sure you have infrastructure where it makes sense. You want to be able to properly manage your forest. You want to support the local economy. And I think the idea that all of those things are mutually exclusive, I think is a silly idea we should reject.
Mhm.
And so we should, rather than just like making this a polarizing thing, we should probably come together and figure out, okay, how can we make this work for both like the environmental community, but also for the outdoors community and for the like energy community, and come up with a common sense proposal that has significant tweaks, but also maintains the premise of just wanting to protect the great outdoors for future generations.
Yeah, I think my only the only mental gymnastics I go through with the roadless rule and it being potentially rescinded is I there are places I go in and elk hunt or mule deer hunt or whatever, and I walk in 5 6 miles, and there's places where like in Idaho where you can walk in 20 miles. You know, name the state. I want those. I want that to still exist.
Hmm.
So yeah, how do we come up with a common sense proposal? Because I don't want to see a road 6 miles in where I used to elk hunt, and all of a sudden there's a road in there. I don't want
Exactly.
that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
but I
and I
do
think
want
it's
energy development, right? And that doesn't mean rape and pillage. It means going back to what we've always kind of like y'all's ethos is responsible, right?
responsible.
How to conserve, but do it. Don't rape and pillage. Do it responsibly,
Right.
as is our mandate from what God, I believe. Um,
Right. And like one of the problems that's happened in the environmental kind of conversation in this country, which I think is a global phenomenon, is it's become about mandates, right? Like people from the top down telling you what to do.
mm,
And the best solutions come from when people negotiate to get to a solution that might not be perfect for everyone, but gets most of what they want for everyone. And so, like, working with the energy development community, working with like local people that live in places like Alaska, working with the outdoors community, working with the environmental community, like, get them in a room, like, figure out the areas where we disagree, where we agree, and where we can actually make some substantive change that makes people happy, not perfectly, but still make some progress. I think
mhm,
that is a type of environmentalism that is required because if you just tell people how to live their lives, you only make some people happy and piss everyone else off, then it's just an unsustainable thing because you then create backlash to it. And I
mhm,
think that's what we've seen, right? Republicans, one of the reasons Republicans have been like generally absent from the environmental conversation is because they saw the left go so extreme, and so they said, "Oh, we're just going to run the opposite direction." Whereas we think that's silly. Like that
mm,
means that we should step in with a common sense alternative, like a positive vision of the
mhm,
future, not just defining yourself by what you're against.
mhm. Um, One thing I do want to say though, and I think this has certainly legs, is historically a lot of our, say, mining permits or e- energy extraction leases, however they're drawn up, they're going to foreign entities. I would just say no more of that. It has to be an American company owned by Americans, period. And by the way, they're getting them for way too cheap. So those need to be significantly more expensive. And then, well, I guess the government can waste that money however they see fit, but at least they would have it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that generally your point is really important. I would say there's probably ways where you can structure it that they're at least partnering with an American company, right? I think one of the things that the Trump administration has actually been doing very well is trying to get more like other countries to invest more in America as opposed to just like in their own homes, when the last few decades have been them taking everything out of America and trying to do it there and
Mm,
kind of screwing over Americans. And I'd be hesitant to like too quickly pull the rug under from that because we want the economic development in America, but work with American workers, work with American companies, make sure
yeah, I
that
think
these
you have
deals
a
are
good point
structured.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, make sure that the
I think.
deals are structured in a way that help us, because I wouldn't want to like inadvertently shoot the American consumer and taxpayer in the foot because we're limiting their economic development.
Yeah, yeah, valid point. Um, what is your thought on green decoys?
On green decoys,
Uh huh.
like like having like the them be ecologically sustainable, or like what
No, no.
specifically?
So green decoy in my world in the hunting community is conser. Let me put it in air quotes. Conservation groups, pro
Hmm.
hunting conservation groups that really are not pro hunting at all. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah. Like as like a Trojan horse and basically try
yeah,
and
Trojan horse. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do
I
you
mean,
do you think they exist? Are they a real threat? Some people be like, no, that's not a thing. I'm like, I mean, I look at the way these people vote, and it doesn't jive with the future, realistically, of sustainability in our North American conservation model. A lot of it going back to defunding it, right,
yeah,
through
yeah.
like an attack on PR dollars. But
Uh, so I'm not an expert specifically within the hunting community on green decoys. What I will say is that for me, a lot of the mainstream environmental movement is a green decoy,
mm-hmm,
and a lot of the organizations that are funded to like stand up for the environment and protect our great outdoors and all the things that they say they do are also the ones that are linked back to like the like Black Lives Matter, neo-Marxist kind of
mm-hmm,
stuff that's happening, like the Palestine marches on college campuses. You have these environmental justice organizations that on their website talk about like being pro-abortion. as like a way to tackle climate change, or like that the path to climate justice runs through a free Palestine. Like these were government funded entities, right? Like literally our taxpayer dollars were going to groups that were saying those kinds of things. And so I think like generally speaking, the idea of like a green decoy is just like a really good description for a lot of the progressive environmental movement, because
Mhm.
they use it as a way to sanitize their entire worldview, whether it's around like reparations, around like Palestine, Israel stuff, around abortion. Like they might genuinely care about all those things, but then talk about those in like an honest way. Don't like make this like an environmental and climate thing when it's not. So yeah, I think green decoys are a very ever-present part of mainstream environmentalism nowadays.
Uh-huh. Um, let's see if I have anything. Oh yeah, one other thing I wanted to ask you about, and this goes back to a more recent article that you had published, grounded humanity and conservation in the age of AI. So where does AI factor into the future of what we love and what we're fighting for? What we've both based, like we've taken different routes, but we both are basically fighting for the same thing with our career choice.
Yeah. So I think that AI holds a lot of promise and can do some good things for us. And I think that's something that America should lead the world on, and we should not let China lead the world on. I think China dominating that is the worst case scenario here.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I am worried about the effects of AI on our health as a nation and as a people. I think we've seen basically what social media and smartphones have done to young people. We've seen how they've enslaved young people. We've seen how they've basically disconnected them from real life, including from the physical world. And I think AI risks putting all of that on steroids. And so, what I write about in the essay is in this increasingly digitized world where more and more we're able to curate our own reality, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
your AI reality, like your smartphone, like even with like virtual reality goggles, like everything is manicured perfectly to what you want, and you're not being exposed to and confronted with the real world. I think that conservation is actually going to become increasingly important as an issue for us to lead on, because one of the most important things that anyone can do is like literally go outside and touch grass. Like kids, we like scientific studies show this, like they're happier outside, they develop better psychologically outside, they learn better outside, like they're physically like getting dirty, like understanding the physical limits of the world is an incredibly important thing. And I'm just very worried about what happens when everything in our life gets outsourced to technology and to AI as opposed to going into the real world. And so what I say basically is we should make sure that in our education system, in our parenting, in our churches, and in our lifestyles, going outside, learning how to hunt, hiking, visiting our national parks. Go, if you live in a city, go to the like local city park, whatever it might be. Spend more time outdoors, connect with creation, connect with the creator of that
Mm-hmm.
creation, and don't let your life be outsourced to AI and the technology overlords, because you're going to lose a really key part of what it means to be a human.
Mm. Agree completely. And as a father of three kids, that is something that I invest in heavily, getting them off devices and outside.
Yeah,
Watching my 10-year-old daughters pull the hearts out of the dove that we shot. Get
yeah,
your hands dirty, get bloody, and
yeah.
they eat it up.
Well, and
Um,
just the last thing to say on that, it teaches you your limits as a human, because when you're on your phone, you're the owner of that reality, right? When you're outside and you're like looking up at a beautiful mountain, like you realize how small you are. You realize that you
mm,
live in relationship to the outdoors, but also to all the people outside.
mm,
And it's a really important message to humans that think they can just like go and manipulate the world to their own liking. It's like, no, you're a small part of a much bigger thing. And your duty is to figure out how you can be a good steward of your little parcel of land and how that affects everyone else in the relationship you have with the rest of the world. So I think that that's the biggest thing that AI and technology risk diminishing in the human experience.
mm-hmm. Well, it's not so much AI, and nor is this like a real recent thing. We've seen this trend over the last century, but Americans are so desensitized and out of the loop when it comes to where food really comes from,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
same problem.
bloody and it's not pretty, but that's reality. If you eat meat, something died. It was a bloody mess. Somebody got their
Yeah.
hands dirty. I mean, okay, modern day packing plants and stuff. Yeah, it's a pretty
Yeah.
seamless process, but that doesn't change what it really is at its core. And I think if you experience that visceral reality of like, oh, okay, I shot this thing and now I've got to turn it into food. Well, then you're never gonna have one of these, warped, insane stances like someone that supports PETA or HSUS
Yeah.
would have. And you're
Yeah.
not going to tell other people like how to procure their own food, or that
Yeah.
they can't. It's more of a you can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, in the grand scheme of human existence, it wasn't so long ago that like every single little thing relied on what you got from the land. You were dependent on the seasons, you were dependent on the weather, you were dependent on your labor, and removing those things means that you're removed from a core part of what it means to be human, which is that you aren't subsistent on yourself. You aren't a self-reliant being. You live in community with others, and the world is set up in a way where seasons exist for a reason, where like the natural cycles of the environment and of nature are a really important part of human existence. And once you sever that connection, that's where you end up with like the weird transhumanist stuff and like even downstream of that is like transgender ideology, right? Like you can somehow separate your physical reality from like your mental reality. Like none of these things make sense. And I think technology and smartphones and AI are at risk further detaching us from that very real aspect of humanity.
But the left will say they're the party of science, and then tell you in the same sentence that a woman can have a penis. I'm like, you just lost all credibility with me, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we wrap things up here, I didn't ask you, what do you like to hunt? And what are your plans for this fall?
Um, I I really like duck hunting and work a lot with like our friends at Ducks Unlimited.
Mm,
So you're gonna go out with them a few times this fall. Very excited for that. Uh, Being in DC, you're kind of limited a little bit, but there's some good spots not too far away. The thing I haven't gotten into but want to get into is elk hunting in Colorado. So my wife's from Colorado.
mm,
My father-in-law like was an elk hunter. He was a fly fishing instructor. I really want to get into that more. That's just an experience that the European mind cannot comprehend, right?
mm.
Like tracking an elk, like going through the mountains, like that's just something that I haven't had the chance to really do much yet, but I want to get into.
Well, don't limit yourself to Colorado. You're 27. You still
Yeah.
have time. I would just start putting in for, getting points in every Western state. And
Yeah.
then, you can, every couple of years, you just burn one state and you go on to the next one. And
Yeah.
then you cycle back around to Colorado. If that's ground zero. And then you get back there in 10 years or something and do it all over again.
There we go.
So,
That sounds like an invite. So let's
yeah.
do it.
All right, Chris. Well, if folks want to support you guys or, become a member, or I don't know if you have like a chapter system
Yeah.
or explain how the organization is set up.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we have 85,000 members. We have over 100 chapters across the country, some on college campuses, some
Mm.
in just like cities and communities. So there's something for everyone. You can check out our website at acc.eco, so acc.eco, and you can just sign up easily there, get involved. My email is on the website if you want to get in touch, but would love to figure out a way to work with you.
And what does it cost to become a member?
It's free.
Oh, okay. Even
It's
better.
free, easy. Yep.
All
And
right.
we give people the opportunity to then be a part of fly-ins to their state capital, to DC, to talk to lawmakers about their policy issues that they care about. We do an annual summit. Like there's lots of opportunities for people to be involved and I think we've got a lot of catching up to do when it comes to fighting back against the left's kind of monopoly on these issues.
Uh-huh.
But ACC's mission is to do exactly that. So if that resonates, then check out the website and join us.
Awesome. Well, I'm inspired, man. I love to see young people picking up the torch for conservation, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'm glad that Kelly connected us once again. So
Shout out to Kelly.
yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks again. Have a great fall.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Cable.